Alright everybody, MinMax Munchkin back with another video. With the newest release of the Unearthed Arcana, we have all 12 classes kind of covered. So even though it's a bit of a, old news, I decided to go ahead and just, put out my own review of all the subclasses that have been released so far. If you can hear somebody talking in the background, that's my mother. She's on the phone, and yes, I'm still living with my parents. I'm not some cool dude who, lives alone and plays D&D. I'm pretty much still your generic neckbeard that lives in his mom's basement. But yeah, without further ado, first and foremost, Patreon shoutouts. So Mike, Matthew, Ewing, Larry, Hocken, BardlyManHardlyTrying, Rogor, SuburbanHell, Frank Fan, Jared Henderson, Kaleron, Albert Kwak, Aidan Harth, Darth Xín, Gary Course, Matthew Collins, Brad Oldham, Joe C Alcazar, Zachary Bradley, Rich Milian, Jeremy Helton, Bredwin, your boy Fox, Bryan Moten, Sean, Cory Williams, Chris Pell, Mannozzi Stefano, Adekoya, Zeb McCubbin, Nathan James, spiffay, PrimalBassBoost, Kyle Shikes, Trevor Green, Matthew Barone, Gaston Ramirez, Jordan Smith-Basset, Tyler Charles, Heliostorm, Lloyd, and Lord Gazda. All you new and old patrons, thank you very much for your continued support. Without you, I probably, I would still be releasing videos, but I'm not gonna lie, this gives me increasingly more and more reason to keep doing so and keep doing it at a faster pace. If you think I'm worth, to chuck a buck my way, the option is there if you go to my Patreon page. The link is gonna be probably somewhere in the description or in the channel pages or whatever. If you want, the option is always there. It's not mandatory, just liking, sharing, commenting and subscribing is more than enough to keep this channel afloat. I don't really mean financially, I mean more like viable in terms of growth. Because in the end of the day, I do consider this YouTube channel somewhat of a serious project, and it's becoming more and more serious as the time passes, and that's all thanks to you guys, all the viewers, likers, commenters, subscribers, Patreon patrons, everybody. So yeah, that's it. Thank you all of you who are watching this video and interacting with my channel and my project in any way, shape or form. So basically, without talking too much about it, we have the Barbarian and Monk. Those are the first two classes that have been released. I think it was some like 2 months ago or something like that. Let me check. So, alright, so, why didn't I have this link prepared? There we go. Beforehand, now I'm wasting time, and you're looking me googling things around. So, yeah, let me check. So, that would be the Artificer. Alright, yeah, I will have Artificer review as well. It's been released couple months back, right? So it's kind of like old news, similar to some of these Unearthed Arcanas. But yeah, there we go. So it's basically like 2 months ago that the Barbarian and Monk came out. So, it's still fresh. And due to me making like official overviews of official classes, I reckon why not go ahead and do these latest iterations of Unearthed Arcana. So, yeah. Anyway, Wild Soul Barbarian, which pretty much takes the page out of Wild Magic Sorcerer, embraces the chaos of randomness and pretty much sticks with it. The end result in terms of mechanics is, I don't know, it's kind of like variable, right? So, yeah, puns. There's all sorts of randomness with this class, but I'm not gonna say that it's bad because of it, but it definitely leaves a little bit of room for improvement and something to desire for, right? So, basically the first thing that we have is lingering magic. It's always nice when a party member has access to detect magic, because detect magic is one of those staple utility spells that kind of like provides clues that can lead you to additional, you know, stuff that you can discover. You know, if there's no magic, okay, well, you know, that's a clue, there's nothing magical. If there is magic, alright, what type of magic, whatever, blah blah blah. Right, so I mean, if you've been watching my video for any amount of time, you know that I like this spell. I mean, it's one of those spells that it's always good to have, regardless of the level of your character. So, you know, it's always nice to have a Barbarian with the primal path that provides one or more non-combat capabilities. Barbarians are kind of notorious for being combat only class, which is, I mean, it's not necessarily true. You can always roleplay, but in terms of mechanics, they definitely lack stuff that you would consider, you know, utility, or I don't know, even role, or even like social encounters and stuff like that. I mean, they do have some. You can take skill proficiency, for example, in I don't know, intimidation. You can take animal handling to interact with the wilderness and nature, but it's kind of limited, you know. They don't have much in a way of like stuff that you would consider not combat oriented. So this is definitely a step in the right direction in that regard, right? And also, if you consider that you can do this up to 7 times, meaning that, I mean, let's say that you're a level 20 Barbarian, which can have Constitution up to 24, that's like a +7 to Constitution, and it's like you can cast Detect Magic 7 times per day. Now, granted, yeah, like not very many games, campaigns, or characters are played up to level 20 or even at level 20. But yeah, there's always a good possibility that you will have +3, +4, even +5. So yeah, being able to cast Detect Magic without relying on your spellcasters to do so is a good thing. So yeah, basically that's it. Now, the main thing that this class offers is the Wild Surge, obviously, which is why this is called Wild Soul. Which is a feature similar to Wild Sorcerer's Surges, right? In a way. It isn't as random due to there only being, well, 8 options from the table in this list. However, if this subclass ever becomes official, if this particular concept becomes official in any way, shape or form, we might see more things listed, or some of these options reworded, reworked, redesigned, or completely maybe removed and replaced by something else. One of the redeeming qualities of a wild sorcerer, wild magic sorcerer, is that it actually takes quite a bit before the novelty factor withers away. So yeah, let me actually open up the sorcerer real quick so that I can kind of compare it to Barbarian over here. So yeah, you will quickly realize that after I click on this thing over here and like look at this table, there's so many things on this table that can happen, good or bad. So depending on what's happening in any case, you know, there's a lot of variability, a lot of different scenarios that can be affected to a bigger or to like more or less extent based on what happens based on this table, right? Well, with Barbarian, there's only a couple of these options, you know, so in some cases it's good, but in other cases it's bad. And in terms of like novelty, there's definitely this subclass definitely doesn't have that factor, doesn't have that, you know, lol factor. But I mean, look, it might not even be that bad. The random factor on its own is actually quite swingy. On lower levels especially, because some of these damaging effects, for example 2d8 force damage here, are pretty high for level 3, even like level 4 and 5. And can easily result in a scenario where just by random happenstance chance you knock out one or more of your squishier allies. You just knock them down to 0 hit points. But it can also severely affect your enemies, so that's good, you know. However, these damaging effects don't really scale with levels. That's it, you know. 2d8 force damage is the same at level 3 as it is at level 20. So, you know, the severity of these damaging effects definitely diminishes and becomes irrelevant, pretty much irrelevant quickly, as the hit points of both of your allies and your enemies inflate by the dozens with higher levels. Now, there are a handful of good effects in this list, such as, for example, number 4, which gives you +2 bonus to AC, and whenever a creature within 10 feet of you hits you with an attack, you deal additional force damage to it based on your con modifier. So that's a good thing, right? That's actually a very good thing to have, as long as you're raging and this effect pops off. You're actually good. +2 to AC means that you're gonna be getting hit less often, and even if you do get hit, the attacker gets additional damage. So that is good, right? Number 2 is kind of like good as well, especially at higher levels, because mobility, being able to teleport, you know, to an unoccupied space that you can see, even if it's just 20 feet, you know, as long as the range lasts, you can activate this effect on each of your turns as a bonus action. So it gives you something to do with your bonus action, increases your mobility, which is something that a lot of barbarians struggle with. But then again, we go back to the random factor. You might just not roll the 2 or 4, or maybe even, you know, number 1. Number 1 can be good in some cases, even though it can backfire. You know, it can pretty much deal damage to your allies. So it can suck life out of your allies, it can suck life out of your enemies, depends on your position, right? Number 3 is, for example, is just total randomness. First and foremost, it's random that you get number 3. And then it's random that it's like you roll 1d4 intangible spirit, so it can be 1, it can be 4. And then these 1d4, it can be 1, it can be 4, randomly go in some random direction, right? So it can be whatever, it can be behind, it can be to the right, left, whatever. So it's just total, complete random. You don't know what's gonna happen if you roll 3, right? 6 is kind of whatever, you know, it lasts for 1 round effectively. A disadvantage on attacks, I mean, give me number 4 any time of the day instead of number 6, you know. But I mean, it's better than nothing. But if you go back to the fact that, I don't know, like Storm Herald Barbarian, when it's raging, it can do all of this fancy stuff, like it can legitimately inflict damage, or it's just, you know, this thing lasting 1 round, this whatever, bro. Give me something that lasts for the full duration of the rage, even if it's, you know, I don't know, it's just lacking, you know. Like a couple of these are good, number 4 too, they are good, and also some of these things, I think the wording of some of these numbers, options, whatever you want, list numbers they require a bit of clarity. For example, number 5. Let's take number 5. Does it mean that, you know, if you read this thing, does it mean that you effectively gain a 10 feet aura that moves with you, or does it mean that the fixed area around you at the moment of you entering rage moves with you? Doesn't move with you, but pretty much stays fixed in place, right? I don't know, like plant life temporarily grows around you until your rage ends. The ground, I mean, I don't know, like I guess this moves with you, or until your rage ends that specific area which you were at the point of entering rage. Yeah, we need some sage advice on this. So maybe even I post it later. I think, like, Jeremy Crawford never replied to any of my tweets, probably because I asked dumb questions, but I think this would be a blah blah blah, tongue twister, legitimate question, right? I mean, does it move with you or does it stay fixed in place? I can't really figure it out, to be honest. I guess it moves. That would be my way of interpreting this, but I'm not sure. So yeah, so for example, number 7. It's quite wordy, but basically it's kind of like a Shadow Blade spell effect, but you know, it doesn't give you additional damage, it just changes your damage type and allows you to chuck a weapon and, you know, light and thrown property. It's kind of like similar to Shadow Blade in that regard. There's at least certain parallels in that regard. But if you think about it, is it magical or not? Does your... I mean, look. It's... it doesn't really matter because it's psychic damage. So, you know, most creatures, it's whatever. But, I mean, it's not specified, so... I guess it's not a magic weapon. That means it works in anti-magic field. I don't know, like... I guess it works in anti-magic field because it doesn't specify it's magical, so... Whatever, even though it's like... everything around this Barbarian subclass screams magic, right? I mean, even one of the features is called Lingering. So... I mean, I think... The more sensible thing would be that this is a magical weapon, but then on the other hand, you can get a magical weapon at level 3. It's all weird, bro. It's just weird. And let's not even go to number 8. A beam of brilliant light lances from your chest in a 5 foot, 60 foot long line. 5 foot wide, 60 foot long. First and foremost, core basic standard rules of 5th edition do not take facing into account. First question that we need to answer: where is the chest of the Barbarian pointed to? Is it pointed to the creature that the Barbarian is actively fighting right now? Or is it pointed to the creature that is look, let's go to these varianted optional rules. So let's not even go there. Let's just go to the Dungeon Master's Guide because I already have it open. Optional rule facing, right? So it does exist. It's not a part of official core standard rule set, but it's an optional rule that you can use. Without going too much into how it works, you can pretty much, I mean, pause the video and read it yourself. Does this feature means that you have to use? How does this work? Like where? Where's the chest of the Barbarian pointed to? Is it... I don't know. We need answers to these questions. So, you know, how do you determine which side is it oriented? Is it... I don't know. I guess the DM is the one who decides, but... I mean, do you really want to leave that much to DM to decide? You know, DM decides whether this is magical or not. DM decides whether... the Barbarian is turned left, right, in front, behind, whatever. Too many questions, too much DM, too much work for DM, if you ask me, right? But yeah, that's it for this table. Now, in terms of the level 6 feature, it's another lackluster, extremely random feature that is, again, randomly abusable at times, while kind of whatever, meh, at other times. Don't get me wrong, the potential to replenish other people's spell slots at the expense of your own life is nuts. This would especially be useful after a hard fight where, for example, a spellcaster has spent all or most of his level 1 to level 4 spell slots, or maybe even up to level 6 spell slots if you're a level 14 barbarian, you know, a d6. So yeah, it would be useful definitely if you roll any of those numbers and the spellcaster misses at least one of those spell slots from each of those, you know, levels, categories. But also, like, let's not even go into some like party compositions. For example, a druid or ranger in a party casts Healing Spirit. If you don't know about this spell, well, you know, it's one of the most broken healing spells in the game. And even the designers, Jeremy Crawford and others, chimed in and said, if you want to keep this spell more tame, you know, here's ways that you can, you know, house rule, home rule. Because legitimately, this spell is nuts outside of combat. In combat, it's not that broken, but outside of combat, for like just 1 minute, you can replenish 10d6 hit points to everybody. Like, even 50 people around, they can just, like, form a line. Or, like, circles or whatever. And just, like, every round, 50, 100 people go through the spirit. yeah, let's not go too much into it, but like you pop that thing, a druid or ranger pops that thing, and then a cleric casts Beacon of Hope, which maximizes all healing, right? So the spell regains maximum number of hit points possible from any healing. So you and everybody else in a party gets guaranteed 60 points worth of healing, guaranteed at the very least at level 2 of Healing Spirit. Let's not even go into upcasting Healing Spirit. So if you upcast Healing Spirit, you basically roll 2d6 every round. So that's 12 points of healing every round. That's 120 points of healing over the course of a minute. This quickly gets really nuts. And then you combine it with the fact that you roll 1d4, maybe you roll 4, so that's times 5, you take 20 damage. But who cares, because you get healed by 12 hit points every round, so just wait a round and then do it again. You know, keep rolling that 1d4, keep giving your spellcasters and everybody else temporary hit points. See how this can result in some stupid broken combinations with specific party compositions and stuff like that. You know, especially if you have that wizard sorcerer after a tough fight, you know, who has absolutely no spell slots, and then you roll a couple 1d4s, 1d6s, and then that wizard sorcerer is like, hey, I feel fresh again, guys, let's do this again. You know, this can quickly turn a ordinary adventuring day in a cakewalk, right? So the DM has to adjust the party, you know, encounter difficulties and everything. So my idea is, instead of being too reliant on a random number generator, 1d4, 1d6, whatever, and therefore being too swingy to kind of like situationally good or meh, whatever, sometimes even irrelevant. I mean, temporary hit points are always good, but whatever. Spell slots is where it's at, you know, because most spellcasters need slots, and you being able to even potentially give them more slots, even if it's just like 1 or 2 more slots per day, that changes things, you know, very quickly and rapidly. I think it would make more sense for this feature to be tied to Constitution as well, similar to how Wild Surge is tied to Constitution, and even Lingering Magic is tied to Constitution. I say limiting and tying this feature to Con modifier in some way would be probably a better way to do this. It's just my way of thinking. I'm not saying that I'm right, but just, you know, I'm throwing ideas out there. So let's say, you know, your Constitution modifier determines the pool of slots you can replenish. Maybe even your Constitution... man, that would be too much. Definitely your Con modifier would determine the pool of slots you can replenish once per day. Or maybe even once a short rest, you know. I don't think that would break the game. But once per day would probably be a safer route. Or just limiting the amount of times you can use this feature per day based on the Con modifier. So let's just say you can use this feature, I don't know, like 3 times per day because your Con modifier is +3. Anything that limits this feature, because at higher levels, as you just seen, you can legitimately make a party around this feature, and then just like every spellcaster in a party can just keep dumping their spell slots with reckless abandon, and it doesn't matter because, you know, for just the price of 2 relatively low level healing spells, the Barbarian can keep like using this feature, replenishing full amount of healing points. And even if you somehow are missing hit points after all of this charade, short rest is still your friend, because you have a D12 hit point die, so just a couple of those and you are good, you know, you're back at full hit points. So yeah, I'm not gonna spend too much more time on this. You know, instead of turning your party into a fireball minigun, I think there's ways to make this feature, you know, better in some ways, more limited, while still being useful, right? Arcane Rebuke, in most cases, in most situations, would work just fine, makes sense. But there are definitely edge cases where you have to ask yourself whether this feature even makes sense. So, for example, what if somebody casts Crying on the Barbarian while the Barbarian is raging? It's perfectly possible that a DM is constantly scrying on you in the background and, you know, constantly asks you, make me a wisdom saving throw, and when you ask why, he doesn't say why. So, you know, it's possible definitely that that's happening, but when that happens and the Barbarian is raging, I mean, does the caster of the spell get damaged even though the two might literally be hundreds, if not thousands of miles apart? The feature, I don't know, well, the way it's worded, that definitely happens, but does it make sense? I don't know. This is definitely something that I think it warrants some kind of discussion, right? And look, I think that the feature probably requires some distance limit, or just some clarification, like as long as the creature is on the same plane of existence, because there are spells and features in the game that specify as long as the creature is on the same plane of existence, or even, you know, regardless of whether the creature is on the same plane of existence or not, because there are creatures, monsters, spells that go beyond plane of existences. You know, something can effect a saving throw on you that is beyond material plane or any other plane that you find yourself on, Feywild or whatever. So I think this feature needs some clarification in that regard. The damage itself, 3d6, is not that high, but very, very few creatures are resistant or even immune to force damage type. So, I mean, especially if you're dealing with creatures that rely on saving throws to do harm to you and your party well, to you specifically, I mean, this does compound very quickly. I mean, 3d6 becomes 6d6, 6d6 becomes 9d6. Hey, it's not an insignificant amount of damage, so yeah, I mean, basically that it is relevant, because the more creature inflicts those saving throws on you, the more, you know, the more damage you deal back to it. So it's kind of situational, but at higher levels, which level 10 is a decently high level, a lot of creatures actually inflict saving throws on you instead of just like attacking you with ranged or melee attacks. Finally, at level 14 we get Chaotic Fury. Now, look, this, I guess when they designed this class, they were kind of thinking, you know, they were looking over this table and they were thinking, alright, I mean, it's kind of too random, and when you enter Rage and you get some of these useless things at level 14, let's give this Barbarian at least a modicum of control over the Wild Surge table. It's still random, you know, at such a high level. I think getting number 4 or number 2, as we explained earlier, is a good thing. So at least improving your odds of getting these 2, or even number 6 is good. It's meh, but it's good. It's better than I don't know, this thing, because this is just complete. Yeah, this needs a rework. We need some clarification on how this works, right? But anyway, yeah, like number 4 and number 2 are good, so I guess it gives you better odds of getting those 2. Even 6 and 7 occasionally. Even 1 can be good at times if you get surrounded, but overall you're still relying on the low sample roll of the, you know, 1d8. Well, basically you roll 2d8 in hopes that you get 4 or 2 or some other effect, right? It's, you know, low sample rolls, like you can take statistics. You can say, you know, if you divide 1 by 8, you have like 12.5% chance to get any of these numbers. So if you roll 2d8, I guess that's like 23-ish%, maybe 24, I don't know, something like 23 to 25% chance to get one of these numbers. So statistics, yeah, sure, it increases your odds, but D&D is actually a game of low sample rolls, so you roll that, you enter rage once, twice, maybe 3 times in a single session. If you enter rage 4 times, I mean, look, yeah, sure, it gives you more odds at getting these effects, but it's still random. So, you know, I don't know, I think level 14 feature should be something more impactful. To compensate for the fact that you are relying on such random effects from the table, and half the time your rage is kind of like whatever, doesn't even matter that you enter rage because you don't have any additional effect that all other barbarians have. If you go, like, any barbarians has something on top of the just like base rage benefit that they get, you know, something that lasts for the full duration of the rage. This barbarian doesn't, so level 14 feature should be like, I don't know, maybe something again based on con modifier, so like half your con modifier rounded down, and that's the amount of times per day you can choose the effect that you get from your wild search table instead of every time rolling on the table. I don't know, maybe that's a good thing to... I'm throwing ideas here. Let me know in the comments down below what you think, by the way. So, yeah, I don't want to spend way more time on that. I mean, half an hour on one subclass, come on. Yeah, let's go into the monk. So, Astral Monk, Astral Self. This monastic tradition fits so many character ideas and concepts, but in terms of mechanics, you know, it's a playtest material as it says here, playtest content. So it does have a few things that I'd personally like to see changed, reworked, replaced, redesigned, if this becomes official, right? So first and foremost, we get our Arms of Astral Self. Not gonna read the feature in its entirety, but basically, you know, right off the bat, this turns a traditionally 2 ability score dependent class that most monks are, well, pretty much almost all monks are. All monks rely on dexterity and wisdom based on right off the bat at level 1, because unarmored defense works off of dexterity and wisdom. But this feature turns you into a much more single ability dependent character. So your wisdom becomes your primary ability score, right? In essence, basically, what this feature allows you to do right off the bat at level 3 is circumvent resistance, even immunity to non-magic bludgeoning, piercing, and slashing damage. Now, most monks can circumvent that starting from level 6, when they get their key empowered strikes that turn their unarmed strikes into magical, you know, magical damage. But, you know, you effectively from level 3 can do it, well, from level 3, right? Because instead of dealing bludgeoning or whatever type of damage, your Astral Arms deal, what is it? It's somewhere in here, Radiant or Necrotic. So you have 2 damage types to choose from. I think based on just like my experience with the game, I don't have the statistics, but I think Radiant is less resisted damage type compared to Necro, but I mean, you can definitely choose, you know. It doesn't specify in this feature that you have to choose for the full duration of the 10 minutes. I mean, these arms, pretty much you can go back and forth. So maybe that needs to be changed, you know, you have to choose one or the other damage type for the full duration of this feature, because maybe being able to just like go back and forth for the full duration of this feature is a bit overpowered. I don't know, let me know. It's just something that right now occurred to me and I didn't give it too much thought, but you know, maybe you just need to opt for one or another and then you can't change it once you spend 2 key points. So yeah, basically at level 3 you can circumvent resistance to non-magic damage, non-magic physical, bludgeoning, piercing, slashing. The damage die hasn't been specified, but the fact these are counted as monk weapons for you, these astral arms, means that, well, basically you use your martial arts damage die for the damage of these things, right? So that's it. The damage output is still on the low end compared to the other martials at higher levels, which is typical for all monks. However, this feature allows, like, I'm talking about the damage as a whole subclass, I'm not talking about this feature alone, but this feature does allow you to conserve massive amount of key points starting from level 11. If you go here and you read that the number of extra attack using your bonus action, you know, bonus action, you can do one more attack at level 3. At level 11 you can do 2 attacks. So, you know, it kind of works in a way that you spend 2 key points and then for the full duration of 10 minutes you can have 2 attacks using your bonus action. Well, let me tell you, every other monk, if some other monk wants to do that, they have to spend 1 key point every round, every turn, you know, to get those 2 attacks. And not to even go into level 17. At level 17 you get 3 attacks. So you can see how this quickly becomes a massive key consumption benefit, because you can conserve so many key points, especially in fights that last more than 3-4 rounds. And then on top of that, you do eventually get more attacks using your bonus action. Now, obviously every other monk has something specific, and this one pretty much has the theme of, yeah, you have these astral arms which hit fast and hit very often. But it's something to think about when you can just like spend 2 key points and then go ham for 10 minutes. I would make a case that, you know, especially for higher levels, I mean, it leads me to believe that there should be some kind of like key expenditure levels for this. If we go, for example, into Sun Soul, there's a precedent for this. For example, if you spend 1 key point, it's not that one, it's the Searing, yeah. So for example, you can, for the amount of key points that you spend, you can upcast Burning Hands. So there's precedent for that. 4 elements, as much as it's kind of shit, has some of that stuff as well. So yeah, you can decide to spend more key points than the base amount, based on your monk level and stuff like that. So my idea would be, like, instead of just making this a flat 10 minute for 2 key points, which is, I mean, if you are dungeon crawling, this is ridiculous, because in a span of 10 minutes you can legitimately have like 2, 3, 4, God knows how many, maybe 5, who knows how many combats can happen in the span of 10 minutes. And how many enemies can keep coming to you. And like, you just spend 2 key points and then like at level 11 you have 2 attacks for the whole duration of 10 minutes. Bro, we need to do some key expenditure levels here. For example, you might need to spend 2 key points for this feature to last 1 minute. Okay, I think that would be balanced. 3 key points for, let's say, 5 minutes. You know, it's still not much it's still not a lot of key points, but it's more. So at least it requires some investment. And then let's say you need 5 key points for full duration of 10 minutes. Or something like that. We can talk about specific details, but I think balancing this feature in that way would be a good start. And another way, obviously, maybe this feature needs to deal just one or other damage type, so once you activate it, you are kind of like locked into one or the other damage type, instead of just being able to choose whatever you want at any case. I don't know, maybe that's not that important. I mean, both Radiant and Necrotic are not that resisted damage types, especially Radiant, but it's kind of like a food for thought, you know. I would personally always go for Radiant in most cases, but I mean, if I have to choose one or another and then I choose Radiant and then I'm fighting a creature that is resistant or even immune to Radiant, then I'm kind of like screwed, right? So maybe that's a way to balance this. I don't know. That's just food for thought. More material for you to comment down below and tell me how stupid my reasoning is. So yeah, that's kind of like, that's my thoughts on it. Level 6, you gain advantage to insight and intimidation for like additional, instead of like spending 2 key points, you spend 3 key points basically, and then you have additional bonus of this is mostly a ribbon feature, thematic buff, but the real power of this feature lies in the fact that in both magical and non-magical, well, non-magical and magical darkness, you can see up to 120 feet for 10 full minutes for just 1 key point. It's a bit nuts for a level 6 feature, if you ask me. I'd say a good starting point to balance this feature would be to remove the ability to see in magic darkness, because it opens up the typical venue of using darkness spell to effectively gain permanent advantage on all attack rolls. It might not be that bad if you have a warlock with Devil Society invocation in your party. However, I've seen darkness spell backfiring way too many times to think that it's a good thing to make yet another class capable of benefiting from the darkness spell from seeing in the magical darkness, while the rest of the party is kind of like literally shooting in the dark and having disadvantage. With this many attacks and the fact that you can you cannot cast the spell yourself, you don't get that benefit, but most tables and most DMs allow multiclassing feats and all sorts of races. If, like, I recently posted a poll on my channel, and overwhelming majority, even though it's just like 100 votes, but that's not that statistically significant, but overwhelming majority of people are playing with feats multiclassing, and even Unearthed Arcana, like 29 plus 14, that's like 43% of people played with Unearthed Arcana. That's crazy. So the potential of using this class in a way that you benefit immensely from being able to see in magical darkness is ridiculous, right? So that's it. That's my opinion on that. Awakening of the Astral Self. While this certainly isn't the most powerful level 11 feature, level 11 monk feature, compared to some other ones, for example, I don't know, Long Death Monk is the first one that comes to mind, because I legitimately think that individually, in vacuum, that's the most powerful level 11 feature that you can get as any monk for that regard, Master of Death, but it's still very, very powerful. Plus 2 to AC, it's kind of like, oh, it's not that I'm kind of like reading from a script and I'm reading the wrong one. It offers significant mechanical buff to your defense and to a much lesser extent offense as well. So the biggest potential that okay, these are mechanical buffs, right? So this is pretty much straightforward. A bit of extra damage, not that important at level 11. Deflect energy is actually very good, because at level 11 you do get affected by a lot of like these acid, cold, fire, lightning or force damage effects. So being able to mitigate some of that damage or even completely nullify it is, you know, good. But the real thing that I think a creative player, a player who thinks a little bit of outside of the box, is Word of the Spirit, because if you just think about it a little bit more in like situations where you get surrounded, or you're in some complex negotiations with I don't know, people, you know, people around you or whatever, you know, you can get out of dangerous, tricky situations, like mysterious, intriguing situations without a single point of damage dealt or taken, or even like single avoiding some like arguments or debates, or I don't know, like misunderstandings or whatnot. So this is definitely useful. It is situational though, but if you think about it just like a bit more creatively and outside of the box, yeah, this can be even more powerful than anything that these other two things that you get at level 11, right? And all the attacks that you get from level 3 and whatnot, right? So finally at level 17 you get +2 to AC while you aren't incapacitated. Now, it's not that relevant at level 17, because at that level you can reasonably expect monsters to have like +15 or even more to hit you. So 20 AC, 22 AC, not that much of a difference, but it's still 10% harder to hit you compared to all other monks whose AC pretty much caps at 20 without magic items or other things that they might get, you know. So +5 from Dex, +5 from Wisdom, +10, that's like 20. So you do have 22, you know, so that's technically better, you know. That's technically 10 times harder to 10% harder to hit you. So yeah, the real deal is this Astral Barrage. Now, this literally turns your character into an unarmed strike minigun. Don't forget, at level 17 you get 3 attacks using your bonus action. You know, if you take the attack action, then using your bonus action at level 17, your level 3 feature gives you 3 attacks. It's right there, worded right there. And then your Astral Barrage, when you take attack action, instead of attacking twice from your ordinary extra attack level 5 feature that every monk gets, you attack 3 times. So basically at level 17 you get not 1 more attack, you get 2 more attacks. It's 6 attacks in total that you can distribute however you want. You can distribute it to 1 creature, you can distribute it to 2, 3, 4, maybe even 6. So offensively this is really good. At level 11 you kind of like get a more defensive feature, but at level 17 you get a feature that puts you a little bit above in terms of like just like ordinary damage per round compared to all other monks, or at least most other monks. Other level 17 monks, for example, Long Death, the one that I already mentioned, they are capable, and even like Open Hand, they are capable of inflicting a lot of damage very quickly in one go, right? At level 17 they have these like things that they can inflict a lot of damage. But Astral Self can actually potentially deal even more damage than that if you give it more time. And time is not a problem for this class in the way that it's been described, designed, you know, because this feature lasts 10 minutes. That's it, you know, for 10 minutes you have this. If you happen to have to take part in like 2 or even 3 or even more combats in those 10 minutes for just like 10 key points, you get all of this, and all of this, and all of this. That's just crazy, you know. It is a significant investment of key points. 10 key points is like pretty much more than half of your pool, and even if you hit level 20 monk, it's still like half of your pool. But, I mean, even if that's not enough, you do get additional way to regain those key points. If you manage, you know, not you, when a creature within 10 feet of you is reduced to 0 hit points, it doesn't even have to be you who reduces the creature to 0 hit points. It can be anybody in a party, or just the creature dies, or whatever. You can use your reaction to regain key points equal to your wisdom modifier. So one more thing that chains off of your keys off of your wisdom ability score. So in essence, you basically spent 5 key points to turn this thing on. Long Death Monk has to spend 10 key points to deal 20d10 damage. Now, granted, that's a lot of damage, you know. That's what is that? That's like 110 damage. So yeah, immediately it kind of like goes nowhere with that. Open Hand can do a similar thing, a bit less damage, but also a bit less key points. You yourself, you have 6 attacks. Now, granted, not all of those are gonna hit, but some of them are. And also, there's a saving throw with both of these, and if the creature succeeds, it's only half the damage. So in case of the Long Death Monk, it's kind of like only 55. And in the case of the Open Hand, it's only like, what, on average is like 55 and then 27. Yeah, I mean, it's not that much, even in case of these two monks. And if we compare this to, for example, Drunken Master, who gets a similar thing at level 17, but Drunken Master cannot focus his flurry of blows on a single creature. He pretty much has to spend his flurry of blows attacks on different creatures. You don't have that limitation as an Astral Self Monk. You pretty much go ahead and dump all of your attacks on single creature if you want. And then on top of that, effectively spend only 5 key points, because sooner or later that creature or another creature or whatever is gonna drop down to 0 hit points. So yeah, I mean, this feature is nuts. You know, I'm gonna say this. Astral Self Monks features on their own, I wouldn't say they are the most powerful of, if you compare them to like some other specific features of these other official monks, right? For example, level 6 Drunken Master, Drunken Monk gets a Tipsy Sway, which I would say is better than the level 6 feature that the Astral Self gets, even though, you know, non-magic darkness is nuts. This is kind of like more useful in a way, because on its own it's more useful. Just like in a vacuum, compare these two features, compare individually, this one I think is better. It's more versatile, allows you to be more, you know, it offers more flexibility in that regard. But, you know, on its own, as a package, right, this class is, you know, every other monk has some kind of like dud feature, you know, like one feature that the monastic tradition gives you that is kind of, whatever, you know, it would be kind of like intoxicated frenzy, whatever. I can attack multiple creatures once. Who cares? At level 17, even multiple creatures have like dozens, if not hundreds of hit points. Astral Self Monk doesn't have that problem. Every feature is good. Astral Self kind of like has this. It's an overall good package. It has good defenses, good offenses. Doesn't have anything super outlandish outside of maybe Astral Sight because of the non-magical, the ability to see in magical darkness. But even then, it's kind of like you have to take some feats, multi-class, specific race to be able to really benefit from the magical darkness on your own without relying on other party members. It's overall like it's tightly packed. There's nothing that this class. There's no glaring holes in this class, and pretty much every other monk has some dud feature, as I said. So, in a way, the way I see this is, I'm frankly not sure whether this is a step in the right direction or just like some good old power creep that slowly started seeping into 5th edition ever since Hexblade Warlock became a thing. I think this class overall, like when you compare the entirety of this class to the entirety of all other subclasses of monk, is just better. Like overall better than every other, even maybe Long Death, you know, because sure, like level 11 feature Master of Death is completely nuts, but it's like, you know, at level 17 is good, but you know, level 6 is whatever, some temporary hit points, you know. It's just that. So yeah, I mean, I don't know, that's my opinion. I don't want to waste any more of your time more on that. That's it for the video. More of these kind of like Unearthed Arcana reviews coming up soon. I do hope to make shorter videos. I kind of expected this to be a half-hour video, but then again, it's an hour. I don't know how I managed to do this, but you know me, once I start talking, I can't stop. So yeah, if you did enjoy, and if you're still watching, like, share, comment, subscribe, hit the bell button. You know the YouTube drill. Again, if you are interested, there's an option to chuck a buck my way, so or even more if you want. With that said, MinMax Munchking out, and talk and see you and talk to you soon.